All right, welcome back to Don't Think, Just Charge. I'm Dave, he's Harvey, and today we're going through some beginner, intermediate, and advanced army lists for your games of one-page rules. Let's get into it. So what's the shtick this week? We are going to be going through a few lists that will help you develop as players in one-page rules. What does that mean? What we've done is we've broken out what we think would be suitable lists for different levels of experience in the game. If you're struggling with playing with your friends for whatever reason on a local game night, or you're going to events and you're not finding success, one of the things that we would suggest you do, along with looking back at all our previous videos about some of the core principles of the game, is consider the armies that you're bringing, because it is such a dynamic game as one-page rules. We say this a lot, low floor, high ceiling source of game where the decisions you make, activation to activation, really do matter. So in order to improve and focus on where you're falling short, limit the range of things that can go wrong. And one of the things you can do is your army list. Bring something that requires less thinking, really, and that way you can improve your move to move in your games. Now, we have prepared two lists from each category for each game system, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. But what do they mean? So when we're discussing what a beginner in one-page rules might look like, this is the sort of player who might be quite new to the game. They've got a core understanding of the rules. They are learning the dynamics and the flow of the game. Sometimes they fail to get the objective game right, or they fail to stick to their game plans. Important to say that a beginner in this category does not necessarily mean someone who hasn't played for very long. You could have played for umpteens of months and or years, and you rock up and you roll dice, and now you're finding, actually, I'd like to win more. So you could still be in this beginner category. It's not an insult to you, but that's the sort of person that we're talking about here. Someone who probably wants to learn to focus on their objective game a bit better.
Yeah, for sure. I think another thing I want to point out about beginners as well is beginners, I think, in my eyes as well, are more likely to forget things that their lists have.
Yeah.
So, you often see it with like versatile defense also. People often forget or stealth and stuff like that. Easy to forget mechanics that they might have, or they find it difficult to play around those things because they're not quite playing for them. So a beginner list tries to ease some of that stress. So not only does it take away options, but it also takes away considerations, right? You can just do your 12-inch move and not worry too much about the outcome of it because you've not paid points for things that you could be wasting.
Yeah. Also, it's very easy to forget a rule once and get flustered. And as soon as you're flustered once in a game, you're going to get flustered on other things much quicker. So that's one of the aspects of a beginner tenet that we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. When we come on to the intermediate levels, that's really where we're aiming at players who have a better understanding of the game, a better grasp of the rules and what rules the units will have. They are, in gameplay sense, they're thinking more than one turn or one activation ahead. They're not just thinking, if I move this, then what? They're thinking, if I move this, what then is the next move my opponent will make, and what's my follow-up? You're thinking, it's like chess, you're thinking a few moves ahead. And they have a reasonable concept and grasp of activation priority and objective gameplay.
Yeah. Basically exactly that. The other thing I'll say about intermediate players is, similar to the beginning one, much more comfortable playing with rules in their army, right? So stuff like casting is not the easiest rule to have. So for the most part, that's been avoided in our beginners list. But you might start seeing things like casting, army lists that have like 9-inch requirements for a lot of their stuff going on. Maybe some more fragile style units are starting to appear in intermediate.
Yeah. And talking about fragile, that does take us quite well into what we categorize as an advanced army list here. Now, this is for a player who is very familiar or more familiar with their own play style. They're familiar with unit matchups. They're becoming more adept at analyzing opponents' lists, opponent gameplay. And if you want a bit more of a deep dive on gameplay, go and check out our last video. Was it only last week? Jeez.
No, week before.
Week before. 2 videos ago. They can see weaknesses in their own gameplay, their opponent's gameplay. They can see multiple activations and turns ahead. They are able to identify their opponent's activation priority, their opponent's mistakes in game. That's a big one as well, when you can see your opponent's made a mistake and capitalize on it. And I've put this line in here to talk to myself. Really, I'm calling myself out here. The advanced player is someone who's less likely to blunder units. And so, Dave, this is talking directly to you because you blunder units like you've never played the game before. But that is a really important aspect of your gameplay as an advanced player.
Yeah, I think the you mentioned unit matchups there.
Yeah.
I think that's a key thing as well. The advanced lists tend to be a bit more fragile, but maybe a bit more potent as well. And as a result, you really need to know exactly what your boundaries are, because fragile armies are very easy to counter if you're doing it wrong. Also, advanced lists tend to have like a very specific play style in mind, such that if you passed it to a total beginner, they would probably deploy everything on the line and move it forward 12 inches, because why else would they do anything else? Whereas some lists require a bit more finesse than that.
Yeah. Also, some advanced lists will have like tricks and techniques for. I appreciate you've said about gameplay and style, but they'll have a specific trick that you look at it and you go, oh, why is that in there? And also, when we come onto it, the ability to look at certain rules and say, I don't have to use that every time. In fact, I'm going to analyze the game and take a step back. But you'll see what we're talking about as we go through it. But for now, we're going to start out with what will be our beginners lists. Now, I really have to double down on this point of saying this is not. Don't look at this if you've played in 4 tournaments and had good results and you've thought, this isn't for me. This first list is a list I want to bring to events. It's, I think, really strong and very straightforward in what it's trying to do. We are focusing here as well on the base game. For those of you who are talking about events and thinking, what about progressive scoring? This is more of a fix on that. And this is a good time to shout out the community. First of all, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, why not? Please do. It does us a huge solid. Get down in the comments, let us know your thoughts, give the video a thumbs up, and find the link to the Discord. We have a wonderful community. It's so chill, and people are constantly posting lists and getting great feedback from all of our community members. So come and join in there. If you have got lists that you want to talk about, that's the place to be. Now, our beginner list, we're going to start with Grimdark Future. We could do beginner, intermediate, advanced lists with most army books in the game. We are focusing just for the first 2 on some of the most popular. We're bringing Battle Brothers, and it's the Wolf Brothers in particular. And then we'll do Alien Hives as well, really because they're popular armies, let's be frank. And if you don't have Wolfy models, remember that this is a mini-agnostic game. Even if you've painted them a colour of something else, bring them in as wolves. So what have we got here? Really good principle. If you like something in a list, bring it twice, because it's probably quite good. So we've got 2 Wolf Combat Walkers, 2 units of Wolf Riders. These guys are buried with a load of AP. A unit of Wolf Destroyers with 4 attacks and rending, ambush, regeneration. And then 2 units of Werewolf Brothers. And one of them, because we had the points, has got some AP4 in it. Now, this is all very straightforward stuff. Why have we picked Wolves? Their army-wide rule. If you want something that will be a bit easier to pilot, something that moves 3 inches extra every single time is going to be very strong.
Yeah, for sure. The name of the game in this list that makes it so simple is, so Wolfborn gives mobility. A lot of the units here are fast, which is also more mobility. More mobility means less room for making mistakes, easier to set up to one-way charges and so on. Regen across the board makes things a lot tankier than they might appear. It's not on every unit, but it's on most. Fearless is just a great thing to see, right? There's lots of Def 2 in this list between the Wolf Riders with the shielded and the Wolf Combat Walkers. That's a lot of wounds on a Def 2. Very, very forgiving. This is a list that you built. The only thing I would actually change about this list is I would have just moved some of the AP4 to the other Werewolf Brothers, just so that they were, they're spare points to the end, put them wherever you want. But yeah, the key thing here is you're basically playing with base rules across the board, right? Like your whole army has Wolfborn, which is just a 3-inch move, so hopefully you don't forget that. But apart from that, everyone knows what Fearless does, everyone knows what Fast does, everyone knows what Regen does, and then you've just got rending, AP4, AP1, normal attacks. Everything is really, really nice and simple. And you can play a really simple game with this, right? You can just move towards the points, you can do your charges, and if one of your flanks start to fail, well, your Wolf Riders can move 19 inches out of nowhere. So
absolutely.
they can cover a massive amount of the board. Strider helps with, not getting punished by terrain and such. Just like a really, really simple to play, solid, like stat check kind of list.
Yeah. The defense helps, Fearless helps, all of these things just keep you in the game a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
On to the bugs. Now, Alien Hives is such a versatile list that you could easily make a beginner, intermediate, or advanced list, but here we focused on the beginner level one. Harvey, talk us through this.
Yeah, so the key thing here is obviously this is not necessarily the best Alien Hives list. This is once again a beginner's one. So we try to focus on things here that are very similar to the previous list that are simple, right? So what makes Alien Hives such a beginner-friendly list? Well, it's actually their army-wide. Their army-wide just gives +1 morale.
Yeah.
It's a really, really nice thing to have as a beginner. More units being able to act gives you kind of like more flexibility, less reliance on single units. And a lot of things in this list are relatively straightforward. So once again, you're seeing some mobility in the Ravenous Beast. These guys are fast and strider with decent AP. You can basically put this onto any unit and expect it to be able to do something, which is good. Assault Grunts are a super, super, super easy unit to use, right? They're agile, fast, and strider. So once again, really, really mobile. They've got some serrated claws buried in them, which is really, really good. So once again, there's some mobility, a little bit of AP going on there. Hive Guardians is a shooting unit. Now, obviously, like Relentless is a slightly harder rule to use because it has a range requirement. But we think that just having one shooting unit in a beginner list seems to make sense. It's very easy to defend. You've got a lot of mobility. Very easy to countercharge against it. Put these guys in the middle of the board. They've got a nice threat range. And it just gives you a little bit more flexibility over being an all melee list.
Yep.
And then finally, two big beasties. Stuff that is tough 12, def 2 is easy to use, it's safe to say. They're Fearless, 3-up morale, with AP4 on the Carnivore X with Regen. That's just an enormous stack of stats.
Stack of stats.
Yep. And then the Hive Lord, as we've talked about many times, is just a really, really solid unit. You could have maybe taken one of the other auras if you wanted to, maybe shielded if you that way inclined, or rapid charge. But I just thought Furious is probably the easiest of them.
Yeah.
And then obviously the Hive Lord is basically just a super kind of a Rex, right? It's got loads of AP4, it's got Regen, it's got Fearless, Qual 3, which turns into Qual 2 for morale checks thanks to Hive Bond. Yeah, just very, very easy list to use. It's a lot of pushing up the board and just taking space.
Yeah, and one of the things that's very important that this list gets in a bit better than the Wolf list is lots of AP4. So if you are being stat checked, this list can overcome it. Objective players and the Assault Grunts and two really core points of your big tough beasties with Regen and Def 2. They'll stick around for a very long time. Lots of speed in the list, I think, is also important, again, to relay.
Yeah, if you watched our list building video, we said mobility is one of the key things you want to look out for. But it's basically because it covers you massively, right? Like if something fails, you can send something over to cover it. And when you have 16-inch charges, let's say, you're a lot harder for your opponent to like play the game better than you by measuring, because sometimes they just simply can't stand somewhere where you can't charge them because you've got such a big threat range.
Absolutely. And when you add in Strider, it just removes all these barriers.
Exactly, yeah. Much harder for your opponent to play around and therefore easier for you to play a list.
So things that will be core principles for you Grimdark future players here. You will notice that these lists have at least 7 activations. At 2,000 points, that is a very nice sweet spot to keep your activations at, because if you're playing fewer than that, as soon as you lose a unit, and expect to lose units in OPR, it's a lethal game, but as soon as you lose your units, you are struggling to play 5 objective games. We've got movement effects, we've got the ability to ignore morale, we've got the ability to ignore difficult terrain, we have good AP. All of these aspects will just make your game that bit easier to manage the on-board position. So that's Grimdark Future. Now, we're going to move into the Age of Fantasy lists now. The thing to remember in Age of Fantasy is that A, it's a lower quality defense system overall. We are presuming you're playing the systems in isolation, so you're not playing Grimdark against Age of Fantasy. And B, AP is much harder to get your hands on, and that balances with the lower defense across the board. So the Human Empire list that we're going to be putting to you, this one's got a few more tricks. Talk us through what your design was on this one, Harvey.
Yeah, so I tried to keep the tricks in this list as simple as they can be, really. So what have we got? So similar to the Alien Hives one, these guys have Hold the Line, which is +1 to their morale. Where this is beginner list, really, is in this kind of Battle Master and double infantryman stacks, right? So these are just enormous stacks of guys with rending. Because of Hold the Line, they have +1 morale, so that brings them to a 4-up morale. The banner brings them to a 3-up morale. And then one of the units has a Battle Master embedded in it. So the Battle Master give Hold the Line boost buff, which then brings them to a 2-up. So round 1, the Battle Master himself is already giving his unit a 2-up morale, so you don't need to worry about his unit. You just buff one of the other units, and round 2 you buff someone else. And very likely that's going to cover you for morale for the game. And then in terms of the other buffs and the thing, we've got precision shooter buffs, but you'll note that they're just embedded within their own units of marksman. So that is relatively simple to deal with, right? You just buff yourself every turn. So you just need to remember that you have that +1 to the quality.
Yeah.
And then from there, Steam Tank. So Steam Tank is actually a very, very simple piece to use. It's very, very durable because it's Def 2, Tough 9. And then it's got the 3-up morale and Fear 2 and stuff. So it's one of those pieces that's kind of much harder to throw away. And a little bit of deadly, a little bit of shooting is quite nice. And then finally, some artillery. So while artillery could be used slightly more advanced, these are only 100 points, really, and they threaten quite a lot over quite a distance. So it's hard to place these in the wrong spot, really. In most boards, you're going to be able to find some nice line of sights. So yeah, this is probably slightly more advanced than some of the GDF ones we've seen. But I think this is still relatively beginner friendly. The other thing to know about this as well is, obviously I said about the shooting unit, like only having one shooting unit is easier to protect. In this circumstance, these shooting units are actually a lot harder to blunder because the Gatling rifles will be the last models you take off the board, and they're a large portion of your shooting.
Yeah.
So for this unit of 11 guys, so the hero and the 10, you've got 3 Gatling rifles. So 12 of your attacks are in the bottom 5 wounds, which is really, really nice. So it makes it a lot, like you can lose half your unit and you'll still be fine for shooting wise. So it's a lot more noob friendly.
Absolutely. And then our final one at 1,500 points is the Orcs list that we've got here. So this one is more shooting light. Let's just talk through it. We've got a Black Orc boss on a Wyvern, or a Wyvern if you're that way inclined to say it. This guy is just 16 attacks with AP 1. He has a Piercing Assault Aura, so he's AP 2 when he's charging, and he's got Melee Slayer. So if you point this guy at anything with the tough keyword, he's suddenly going to be AP 4 on the charge, so he will just destroy people.
Yes.
You've got a block of 20 orcs. 20 is very hard to get through. Speed feat, so it can go quickly. Ravage, so it's more attacks. They're 2 attacks each. Banner for extra morale. And melee evasion, so they're even harder to kill. You've got 2 units of Black Orcs. A2, again with this Melee Slayer and a banner in. You've got a giant Boar Rider, a big tough 9 dude with just a ton of attacks, and 2 units of 5 Orc shooters. So everything is quite streamlined. It's quite don't think, just charge. And to cover it all off, when you're attacking, your attacks do even more because of the army-wide rule of just exploding 6s. Your 6s to hit deal an extra hit. You'll notice that 4 of the units here have got banners in, again, getting that morale juice out of it. And we've got some fast, we've got some flying, ways to ignore terrain. The same principles kind of apply here.
Yeah, and a similar line of thinking with the shooting here. So we've got 2 units of Orc shooters, but they're only small stacks, only 75 points. So it's not the end of the world if you throw those guys away. They're more just for like existing, plinking away small shots. Really, the meat of this list is walking up the board and charging things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, this is 7 activations. We're at 1,500 points because of Age of Fantasy. So those 2 Orc shooters being very, very squishy. 5 wounds on 5 ups. They can be your deep in your own territory objective holders, or your burner activations to try and pull your opponent's mistakes out a little bit more.
Yep.
4 very straightforward lists. Principles. Core principles is what I'd encourage you to think about if you're trying to just have a solid list. Movement, morale, AP, 7 activations. That's really just some of the best advice I can give to anybody who is struggling to build a list in one-page rules to find some effectiveness. through those sorts of principles, you'll find that your lists will just naturally start to improve.
Yep.
Let's move on now to the intermediate lists. So our first intermediate list that we're going to talk about is going to be the Titan Lords. Harvey, talk us through this. For long-time viewers of the channel, you might recognize the list.
Yeah, so I actually built this list from scratch, and I can't remember if this then ended up in the same position as the
Not
as what
quite
we had
the same
before.
position.
I think there might be some changes. The reason why Titan Lords have made it onto the intermediate list is because they're 5 activations, basically. This is a list that is it's harder to play because you have less options, and your options therefore, or your choices therefore matter slightly more. But yeah, you should recognize the kind of general the Titan Lord format, right? So we've got 3 Vassal Micro Titans. These guys are Warbound with Caster and Regen. They're just kind of bodies on the board, really. Caster is a slightly more complicated rule, especially with these guys being only Caster 2. They do a lot of feeding tokens back and forth, which obviously is very it's beyond a beginner tactic, I think. It requires a bit of positional play between your units. But then these guys are, Def 2 and Regen, so not so hard to play. And then we've got an Errant Mini Titan, who is basically just a bigger version of the previous guys. This is Fast Strider, Caster, Regen, Warbound. I put the heavy chainsaws on this. This is a mix between AP4 and heavy chainsaws, because it's got Warbound, and it's a neat little combo you can do. Makes him be able to kill a lot of big things, and to be honest, he's probably aggressive enough to kill lots of small stacks anyway. Yeah, even with the deadly.
Yeah.
And then finally, the Yeoman Mini Titan. This is a relatively standard setup. So you've got your Relentless and you've got your split shooting. So you point your autocannon at one unit, your Gatling cannon at another unit, and you hope with Warbound involved that you can wipe out 2 units in one activation and get some real value out of that. And yeah, you've got to take advantage of Relentless for that and so on. And delayed action on here, this is almost certainly just some extra burner points. It doesn't actually need to be there. This could be literally anything. But delayed action is one of those things where, on a big shooting unit like this, it can be interesting to keep delayed a little bit, so your opponent has to do things like unshake, and then you can reshake them with shooting and such. But yeah, that's the list.
Yeah. And again, we're venturing outside of those bounds of core army list building principles of the 7 activations, because you can't at 2,000 points with Titan Lords. But what we have got is good morale, we're on core 3 up, good defense 2 up, regen on all of these units.
Yep.
Fast and Strider coming in on the Errant Mini Titan, which is going to be a big benefit for you. And then Warbound is just so powerful, it's extra buried AP. You've also got the very cute effect of Warbound and Deadly 3, which doubles up to Deadly 6 when you get a nat 1 on the dice. In D&D mode, a 1 on your defense. AP through Thrust, which gets you there as well. Honor Code is additional point of morale mitigation, just the ability to unshake on a 4-up at the beginning of the round. Lots of little things here that lead into those points of the beginner lists of those core principles, very supporting, but only 5 activations. You lose one of these and you will be strained on the board. You might start to feel the stretch there. Even want to go back and see a Titan Lords game, click back a few videos, you'll see one where I played Titan Lords against Harvey playing Ogres. That was 3 objectives, and I felt stressed and strained across the board just trying to keep all of those objectives down. It is something that can be punished on objective deployment by just flinging them far and wide and making each Titan stand alone without support.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Now we're into something that is my kind of thing, the Golden Boys, the Custodian Brothers. What have we got here for a 2,000 points intermediate list? We've got a Chungo block of 6 Custodian Brothers. This one is kitted out with Regen Aura and Teleport Aura, so they're blinking 18 inches. We've got 4 spears in there for the AP. Then we have 2 supporting units of Custodian Brothers. No regen, just swords. 2 units of 6 Hunter Sisters. We've got Scouts and Piercing Target there to get extra sneaky AP into the list. And a single Custodian Walker with 2 Deadly 6 guns and a Shred Mark. So what have we got here? Importantly, you'll see there's only 6 activations. With those Hunter Sisters with Scout, this is why we're talking to me specifically here. Don't blunder your Scouts by putting them in the wrong place and having them die. They have such good output, but you can really screw yourself up. Otherwise, though, Fearless, good quality, good defense, regen, good mobility on the block of 6 brothers. We've got some deadly in the Custodian Combat Walker, who's also a tough 12, AP -1, fearless Chungus. We are still we're not venturing too far from those core principles, but with 6 activations, it takes one mistake to feel the strain.
Yeah, and this list features a bit more glass cannon stuff with the Hunter Sisters as well. This list will fall down against Horde playstyles if the Hunter Sisters are thrown away. So Scout obviously is slightly more complex to use, and then understanding the role the Hunter Sisters are playing in this list to allow the Custodian Brothers to do what they need to be doing, and the Walker and such like that. There's a lot of designated roles in this list, and so you need to understand the synergies and how you need to deploy this list, and perhaps deploy objectives as well to really get the most out of it.
Yeah. Still a very solid list. I'm going to be bringing something very similar to this probably next week, unless I check it out to an event that we're going to. It's something that has a lot of potential, but can fall apart very quickly when played incorrectly. So the Custodian Brothers are a good spot to land and sit our intermediate list. Age fantasy players, let's go and have a look at what we've got for you. Harvey, talk us through some dwarves.
Yeah, so dwarves fell under intermediate because of two things. One, because slow is obviously an intermediate rule. It's a harder rule to use. You're reliant on the mobility you have in your list to make up for it. And sturdy obviously is a range requirement army-wide as well. So it makes positional play with a slow army kind of a key thing to its survivability, and that's obviously quite complex and hard to do. So what do we have in this list then? So we got Berserker Lord in Berserkers. So this is just an almighty stack of kill the things in front of you. So Quake is ignores regen, and on a 1 you get an extra wound. So it's Shred plus ignores regen, which is obviously very potent. These guys have Devastating Frenzy, they have Furious, Melee Slayer, Musician, and because of the Swift Aura, they're actually moving 13-inch charges.
One of my favorite units in the game is this thing right here. It's great.
Oh, this is an absolute blender unit. And because of Devastating Frenzy, you're going to be getting, I think it's +1 defense, isn't it, as well? Yeah, +1 defense, +1 AP every time you kill something. So it's kind of important to start using that as early as possible. If you can kill one unit, you'll be up to 4 up. With the Sturdy, you could be up to a 3 up. And you can very quickly turn this relatively fragile block into something quite aggressive if you're making the correct plays with it. It also represents your one true source of kill the big guy in this army. So once again, very important that you keep that safe. From there, we've got 2 units of coal miners. This is got like a weird, like chaffy infiltrate unit, but it's how you're going to be able to capture back objectives. If your opponent deploys objectives cleverly, they're going to force you to use these to take them, and then hopefully they're going to try and counter them with some clever tactics. But they're basically an essential in a dwarf list. You have to run some sort of ambush like this because you simply can't make it across the board. You can't be relying on your Berserker Lord plus Berserkers to be double moving onto points across your end of the board if your opponent just has like a crappy swarm there or something. From here, we've got just some nice chaff, really. So Iron Warriors are extremely cheap for what they are. They're 2 up defense because of sturdy. They've got a Banas, they've got 2 up morale. The Musician gives them a little bit extra mobility. Quake's a really nice rule once again. I think it used to be Rending and now it's that, which seems a lot better. And then you got 1 more unit of Iron Warriors, but this one with a caster 2 in it. So once again, a bit of an intermediate rule, the caster 2. The things we're looking to cast here is actually Rapid Charge, Rune of Battle. Which is obviously very good with the Berserker Lord. All of a sudden, you've got this unit that in a dwarf list is charging 17 inches. And it's like a toggle on, a little bit of a tricksy play, very clever. And apart from that, there's some nice things like Sturdy Boost Aura. You can go 50-50 on that, which would guarantee your extra 2-ups in the Warriors and such. And then finally, just 2 units of Rangers. These guys are fantasy shotgunners. They just have Scout and shotguns, basically.
Yeah.
So once again, Scout a bit more of a slightly advanced rule. But yeah, between those and the coal miners, they represent the mobility in the army and they let you be on the board. So you can see that this list has a bit of a plan. And if you don't execute that plan, you're going to struggle. If you put your coal miners down in the wrong place, or maybe even commit coal miners where they can't win a point, that you're going to struggle with that. Sometimes it's just better to use them as a roadblock instead. But yeah, you can kind of see how this list would be harder to pilot than some of our beginner ones.
Yeah, on a 6x4 board, everything can be very much spread out, and you can just lose by virtue of having slow. So the ability to have scout and ambush, infiltrate, as it is on the miners, is really important. And if you point your Berserker Lord and Berserkers in the wrong direction, then you could just be a bit screwed. Harvey made a comment there of saying you can't really afford for this unit just to make 2 double moves. You really want it to be hitting 3 charges in a game. And so if your opponent outdeploys you with this, you can find yourself suffering. You do have mitigation. You've got musicians. Pretty much anywhere you can guess. Can you guess a musician in coal miners? I don't think you can.
I don't think you can, no. So, nor do you need them there at infiltrate anyway.
Well, exactly. But anywhere you can guess a musician, that's been built into this list. And yes, banner on 3-up. These guys, these Iron Warriors, they don't go anywhere. They're so resilient in fantasy.
Yeah, for sure.
Piled on with the fact that it's hard to get AP out of the game. Like the Dwarves have just, if they want to sit still somewhere, they will do it. They are very hard to budge.
Yeah, and one final note about Musician as well. Musician in range units is really good because it means you're only actually moving 1 inch slower than the normal speed, but you're still getting the slow discount, and Musician is not that expensive. Whereas obviously for melee units, you're not quite getting it. You're getting a 9-inch charge instead of a 12-inch charge, so you're losing a lot extra there. But yeah, for slow, it's really nice.
Really good.
With shooting, yeah.
Fab. Let's talk about some Mummified Undead, another army that I'm quite enthusiastic about. At the top of this list, we've got a block of 10 skeleton warriors. They've got a caster buried in. Again, caster, quite an advanced list. They've got a banner in there to make their morale come off a bit better. What's good? Doing it once, so let's do it twice. And that is then the theme for the rest of this list, nearly. 2 units of skeleton horsemen. So impact in a system where there is typically, I appreciate we've just come off the back of Dwarves, but typically poor defense, having reliable hits is phenomenal. Impact is such a huge rule to have. And then with skeleton horsemen, they can come very cheaply in blocks of 10. So that is 10 2-ups on top of having A1 hand weapons here. On top of having Scout and Fast and Royal Legion, which gives you, I haven't talked about it, but it gives you extra charge range or range when shooting, but we're not shooting in this list, so everyone's charging 3 extra inches. These skeleton horsemen can absolutely destroy things. Oh, sorry, musician as well, let's not forget that. Yeah. We've got 20-inch charges coming out of these guys with their 20 attacks. It's pretty damn good. You've got piercing spotters, 2 of them per unit, so on average you're going to be getting +1 to hit for something else that's relevant. Now, what are the relevant things? Oh, sorry, it's AP. Yeah. Piercing. It's AP, not +1 to hit, sorry, +1 AP. For the relevant things. Now, what are the relevant things here? It are these 2 units of skeleton giants, 200 points on the upgrades we've got here for tough 12. 200 points for a tough 12 unit is insanely good when you've got 12 attacks with AP 1 and Fear 2 and 15-inch charges. And then I love a tough 12. They're fantastic. So let's have another one. Giant God Statue. It's a 3/3 instead. It doesn't have the full 12 attacks, but what does it have is Caster 2, which means that you can just get some extra damage out of there as well. One of the things I have to highlight as a powerhouse in the Mummified Undead spell list is this level 1 spell, Difficult Terrain. If we've talked about Dwarves and making sure you're maximizing on your ability to control your movement and think those few steps ahead, because if you don't, you get it wrong. When your opponent doesn't think about it either, this is absolutely ruinous. It can just pull people apart. Can that Difficult Terrain debuff? And getting it out of 3 units is very good if you don't want to do your damage.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously this is slightly more intermediate list because of spell casting here. So we've got 3 casters in total between the giant god statues, and then you've got your difficult terrain stuff going on, which is obviously very good. Piercing spotter as well. I believe it doesn't work with impact, but I'm not sure if it does or not. It's one of these kind of weird edge cases because if you hover over impact says roll X when attacking after charging, and piercing spotter says you can remove tokens when attacking to get +X AP on hits. And now impact is hits, they're not weapon attacks. It doesn't say weapon attacks, it just says hits. This is probably one that needs some sort of rules clarification because I think strict rules as written, you could do it because if you're doing impact when attacking and this says when attacking, that all seems to fall under the same time for me. And I think it makes sense that you would allow that. But yeah, one that probably needs rule clarification at some point. Obviously, very, very potent if you can do it. If you get off 2 of these, then you're doing impact hits with AP2, which is very, very good. 10 attacks hitting on 2s with AP2 is very strong, on top of the 10 weapon attacks you were doing as well. But either way, yeah, as you mentioned, there's not a huge amount of AP kicking around in this list, so being able to buff up, just like throw it out across the list really on anything they've got with high defense, and just enable your skeleton giants, giant god statues, and to be honest, even just your skeleton warriors to be able to hurt things a bit more is always good. But yeah, I think they should work with impact based on my reading, but
I disagree on that one, but I think that's why this is the sort of thing that needs clarity, because I see when attacking as meaning, looking at rules as intended, I think that's meant to be with weapons, whereas impact is special rules. And I think that's the delineation, but it's just when attacking, and you're impacting when attacking. So it's not clear for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, basically there is language that could be there that would make it strictly weapons, and that language isn't there. Is kind of my thinking, right? Like, it's not worded in such a way where it would only affect weapons, because there's language for that, right? And that language should be used where it's intended. But if anyone's out there and knows the answer, like knows the answer, not, because
have you got a Discord link? That's what we're asking for.
Yeah, basically, right. Yeah, because I read them as working together. But yeah, it would be interesting to see, especially if you're one of these people out there running tournaments. How would you rule this in a tournament setting?
Yeah. So that is our 4 intermediate lists. I pulled the dwarves away. Core principles still apply, but you make concessions. You make concessions in a situation where you know your game plan and you're able to think about it a few moves ahead and try to pull it off, whilst also not giving up your game for what your opponent is doing. You've got things that can cover your weaknesses, infiltrate and scout. You've got things that can punish opponents' mistakes, maybe with difficult terrain debuff, and movement shenanigans can all come through. These lists, I'd actually say that I was about to say, I feel like the leap from beginner to intermediate on these 4 lists alone is quite a big one. We're about to pull out some quite tricky advanced lists. So maybe the leap is even between all of them, but it is a leap. It's not really a creeping, crawling step. These are quite sizable changes, I think, between them. If you want to have a look at what we consider to be another sizable step up, stay there. I'll bring up some advanced lists. On to the advanced lists. What are we going to see here? We're going to see breaking from our core principles. We're going to be seeing tricks. We're going to be seeing high risk, high reward play. Things that can go wrong do go wrong when playing these lists, as I'll tell you from experience. Let's start with some Elven Jesters. There's a lot of elves. Actually, that's a really big point. There's a lot of elves. There's not very high defense. Talk about the Elven Jesters, Harvey.
Yeah, so it's slightly a cop-out sometimes, but I do think that having a more aggressive list calls for slightly better play, because you can really, really slip up very, very easily. So what have we got in this list? So straight away, ambushing casters. This is quite a high skill cap unit to use. What's interesting about ambushing casters is they're very, 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 very potent when they're used correctly. Now, the Elven Jesters don't have the most amazing list. What they do have is they have the 4 hits AP1 of Fragment, which is actually quite nice, because it's basically 4 hits AP2. And then they've got 1 hit AP2 and Deadly 3. So they've got like 2 nice-ish spells that you can throw out. The 6 hits one is take it or leave it. But yes. So these are just like 2 little ambush buddies. What they do is they allow your pranksters to play a bit better. Because in this list, obviously, you have pranksters and you want them to be coming down and blowing up things in front of them. The pranksters, their goal is to be, because they're quality 3, but they have thrusts, so they hit on 2s with AP2, and they can ambush, and they also have furious, so they're basically quality 1. So effectively, you should be expecting 20 hits every time you attack with these guys. 20 hits AP2 is enough to kill most things in the game. Yeah. And that's, of course, not taking into consideration the rest of the list. Finally, in this list, we've got 2 units of jokers, which they're like flamers, but without quality 2. because they have point blank surge, which is, I think it was within 9 inches, no, within 12 inches, right? So like they have like surge instead of quality 2, so they're more slightly explosive. But yes, and then they have ambush redeployment, and so those guys are then hidden inside heavy jet bikes, and the heavy jet bikes, honestly, like the guns on these things are pretty
They're
decent.
great.
You've got, yeah,
Slayer
7
mark
attacks
as well.
Yeah, so 7 attacks, decent range. They're 2 up defense. They've got evasive, which is super, super great. These guys are fast, and they've got the blink, and they've got strider, so they're super, super mobile. But yeah, Slayer mark is a real thing here. So Slayer mark is just so, so good. It gives you +2 AP against anything that's tough 3 or higher. Now, marks, I think, like the other things here, they don't require line of sight, which makes this thing really fucking annoying to avoid. You just swan up the board and mark the unit that you're going to destroy with your pranks the next turn. Or you swan up the board and mark the thing that your Joker's about to pop out and destroy, or whatever you want, really. Very, very potent. But you can see whether this list is strained a bit, right? So they don't have great ways of contesting objectives on this list. You're basically forced to use the jet bikes and the Joker's turn 1. You need 3 ambushes in this list to be able to allow the pranksters to go first. You also want a little bit of ambush buffer to make the pranksters so you don't have to deploy them first, just in case your opponent has more ambush than you. So there's a little bit of complexity in this list. And the idea with this list is that you're coming down, you're blowing things up, you're using ambush redeployment to move around the board again. There are situations where you may end up using your Master Jesters just to take objectives instead. So you deploy them on the board to start, and then you ambush redeploy them off the board. You need to make a read on your opponent's list to figure out activations to see if you're allowed to do that, which is obviously more complexity. Ambush redeploy on the Jokers, once again, is quite a high skill cap thing to try and figure out. Sometimes you just want to leave them there. And other times you recognize that they could die, so they want to disappear after their attacks. Because sometimes you do need things on the board contesting things, right? Like if you swan up the board and pop your Jokers out and then ambush redeploy them, then you might just be left with 2 bikes that can contest objectives next turn, and that might be problematic. So yeah, this is the kind of list that's very, very fragile, but has a lot of damage output. Slayer mark doing a lot of lifting here. But yeah, and if you can use it correctly, you can do a lot of things, like a lot of one-way trades, right? Pranksters can blow up a lot of units on a charge. 20, it hits AP2/AP4, kills basically every tough 12 in the game. So tough 12 with Slayer mark, and things without tough pretty much die to that anyway, right? There's very, very little def 2 up that isn't tough as well. Tough 3. Basically, the only things in the game that are like robot legions, and they come in stacks of 10. And guess what the average amount of damage you do with 20 AP2 attacks are against def 2? And even if they attack back, like, come on, there's going to be one thing left. So. And you're evasive, lol. So they're even harder to hit. And actually, they're regen as well. They are regen as well.
They're regen as well.
Like, yeah, it's a very, very explosive, scary thing to put on the board in front of your opponent. So yeah, go do it, I guess. The other thing you could do in this list, if you really wanted to, is you could actually embed a Master Jester in the pranksters. If you want a little bit extra punch in that unit and bring your activation count down by 1. Obviously, you're increasing your risk slightly there because you've got less things you can like spread out across the thing, but you are obviously making that first activation a lot more potent because you come down with spell casting on top of the charge, and then it all disappears off the board. Elven Jesters is just super, super fun list to play, very much unlike anything else.
Very tricksy, dash around the board. You've got good mobility, good control, but you can fall apart very quickly. This ambush redeployment, I think, again, calling for some sort of rules clarification. It'd be really nice to know if you held the objective in the previous round. If you still lose it, I don't think you should, but it'd be nice to know the difference there. But yeah, you can flub really easily with Jesters.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. The only other list that comes kind of similarly close to Elven Jesters in the playstyle is Dark Elves. We just come off the back of playing a tournament this weekend where I played Dark Elves. It's not in this thing, but if you're interested in playing some Dark Elf Raiders and want to see a unique playstyle, pop into the Discord. I'll share the link with you and I'll do a bit of a run through. But yeah, basically everyone I played this week was like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah, Dark Elves are a bit of a what the fuck. Like they've got this isn't a Dark Elves video, but we can do an event breakdown after next week.
That's another advanced list if you're an elf fan.
Yeah. Next, we've got some more elves. Shock.
Yep.
High elf fleets. What have we got on this 2,000 point list? We've got, again, ambushing casters. We have 3 of them. They've got this crossing attack, so something that you can juice a bit of extra damage from your units if you are thinking about it. You combine it with your 3 shots AP4. These Elven Nobles can put out more damage than you think. They've actually got a really good level 3 spell. 6 hits with AP1 is great, and then occasionally it can be 6 hits with a couple of hits of AP3 in there, which is all right. Shifters, talking about another unit that ambushes down and hopefully wipes something out. This thing comes down with a fuckload of attacks hitting on call 3 with AP4. Teleports plus Highborn means that this thing can come down and move just half the board and still do its shooting every single time. There's also a huge amount, and I didn't actually mention it in the Elven Jesters, but something that applies to Elven Jesters, it applies to Shifters, and spoilers, it will apply in Wood Elves as well. It is a really hard skill to be able to analyze sometimes and go, I am not ambushing my ambushers. Let the points go. It is sometimes better. And when you do with Shifters, for example, you have 14-inch moves with 12-inch guns, you're still going to be detonating people off the board.
Yep.
We've staying power, some elemental strikers here, just lovely to have 3/3 tough 3 units. They're shielded to actually be 3/2s. They're furious on the charge. They're fearless to stick around, and highborn as well, giving you mobility. And a great elemental, this thing, tough 12, tons of attacks. We've got some shard guns in there in case you want to stand still and shoot. It's got caster 2, so it's either going to be throwing out its own spells like Unwieldy, or it's feeding its points into the Elven Nobles the turns that they come down to really help them juice their spells. This is a go forward list that falls apart really quickly.
Yeah, so you can see that the right hand block of unit cards here is the things that you're going to be trusting to capture objectives.
Absolutely.
Like you'll note that the Great Elemental here, it didn't go for its max attack profile. It's only got 10 attacks. 6 of them are AP4, so it makes it still pretty potent. Just so you can keep that fortified, just so you can have units on the board that can contest objectives more solidly, because the Elven Nobles are a super high skill cap unit to use, like the 3 of them. So don't sleep on the guns. The guns are actually really good. Oftentimes 2 hits with AP4 is enough to cause some proper damage, especially with spellcasting. But yes, as you mentioned, you can use the Great Elemental in 2 different ways. You can just plod them up the board and throw out some spells, whatever. Or you can hold the points on the Great Elemental until round 2. Then it has 4 points, and then it can use those to cast 2 different spells on 2-ups. With the help of the Elven Nobles, right? The Elven Nobles need to be placed cleverly so they can feed points into Great Elemental, so you can activate it first and still get the casting off. Or alternatively, you feed tokens from the Great Elementals to the Elven Nobles, and the Elven Nobles being really fast with their highborn and also having flying means you can do some nasty stuff with like being out of line of sight, move 7 inches forwards, cast your spells, move 7 inches back, stay out of line of sight, play really, really tricksy games with the Elven Nobles. And then obviously the punch in this list is the Shifters. You really, really, really need to play these Shifters well because they are a whole load of points. And if you don't, you're going to be extremely sad. But yes, you've got 16 attacks with AP4 plus another 8, so 24 attacks with AP4. That's 16 hits on average with AP4. That kills basically every single tough 12 thing in the game, apart from ones with regen. On average, that is. Also knowing those breakpoints is really important, right? If you send your Shifter out and you're playing against that, I think the Wolf list we put up before, right? I think it had regen on the Walkers, maybe. A Blood one could, okay, yeah. So a Blood Walker with regen or whatever, tough 12, you would ambush your Shifters down, you'd go and you'd shoot it, you load at them, and then it might live and then charge and destroy your Shifters, and you would be absolutely devastated if you didn't know that matchup. But if you did know that matchup, then you could do stuff like, I'm going to use the Elven Nobles to plink at the Bloodwalker with 2 hits AP4 a couple of times, bring it within range, and then when I attack with my Shifters, it's a guaranteed kill. And I've delayed some activations, so there's less counterplay against my Shifters and so on, right? So you can see the complexity in this list. Every unit here needs to be performing for it really to work. As you said, like knowing not to ambush things is also very important, because not ambushing an Elven Noble could be the difference between winning and losing a game just off the back of objectives. Yeah,
identifying what are your deployment issues that you're up against, because if you've got, as you do here, 4 ambushing units. You've only got 3 things to put down in deployment. Are you going to lose deployment and lose the game off the back of that?
Yeah.
If you've set up your objectives in a way to really support your ambush and your opponent just out deploys you, that your ambushes are all spread really thin and your casters can't feed into each other, you're going to lose that game. I think high risk is a really good way of describing these advanced lists.
Yeah.
Fab. Let's go and have a little bit of a chat about our last 2 lists, which are Age of Fantasy.
Ghostly Undead.
Go on,
Ghostly
Harvey.
Undead.
Pop off, King.
So Ghostly Undead are very, very different to the way they used to play. I think I probably would have put them under Advanced before, though Undead made them quite easy to play, but the strategy was very easy to flub.
Yeah.
Right? Like you could just play to like monkey brain about the whole thing and throw away your advantage with Undead. So they kind of fell up, maybe. I think the new version of Ghostly Undead is a lot harder to play. So what makes this difficult to play? It's a little bit the glass cannon thing again, but it's kind of like a perfect storm of glass cannon-y stuff. So what do you have in this list? You have Scout across 2 different units. So super important you don't mess up these scouts. Super important you line them up with threats so they can actually come in and attack. Precision Feat Aura is a once per game +2 to hit. On these units, which are relatively aggressively statted with the Grim Leaders in them. It's really important that you recognize the targets you can kill with these things, because what you want to do is go in, Precision Feat Aura, kill something, and use that to snowball the game. So if you misapply this Precision Feat Aura, if you do a charge where it doesn't quite kill and then you lose on the snapback, or perhaps you put it onto the wrong targets, right? Like you need to use it to kill a certain unit in their list and you instead waste it on some chaff. It can make it very, very difficult to win. Outside of that, you've got Scythe Ghosts. Now, Scythe Ghosts are like an absolute blender unit if you can get them into charge range.
Yeah.
So what they have is, so Ethereal is teleport on everything, right? So everything has teleport without the extra 6 inches range, right? So you can use Scythe Ghosts really effectively if you have something shielding for them. Which is kind of where some of the scout comes in, right? Because you can teleport over the top of your own units to get charges in. But really, it's where you start using the Banshees. Now, Banshees are such a great frontline unit in the most weird possible way, right? Like,
Yeah,
you would
really
look at this and go like, these things need protecting. But really, you just kind of wander Banshees up the board. They have shotguns, so they shoot and kill things.
Call 3
and
shotguns.
Yeah, Qual 3 shotguns, so good. And then you can use Side Ghosts to countercharge things. And the Banshees kind of bring things in, and they're such a low point investment. So yeah, Side Ghosts, like I said. So Precision Feat obviously means they're hitting on 3-ups instead of 5-ups. And AP1 and Reap is a really, really nice combo. So AP1 it's good for Def 5. And then you've got this kind of Def 4 middle point where you're getting them up to Def 5, but not quite. And then 2 and 3, you get AP2. So you basically ignore it. So the best they're ever going to be rolling against this unit is a 5-up.
Yeah.
Which is really good for making it a blendery unit. Obviously, you'd like them to be Def 3, so your 3 total brings them to 6s. It's kind of like a weird like up and downy thing going on in terms of probabilities. But yeah, this is a hard list to play because it's so fragile. It's got Precision Feat Aura, so you need to be maximizing those initial turns because after it you lose a lot of aggressiveness. And because of that, what you want to do is you're going to go in and blow stuff up and then start playing the old Ghostly Undead cagey game, but without any of the morale stuff. Yeah, like you've blown your load, you've done as much damage as you can do. Maybe now's the time just to teleport over a wall, waste an activation of your opponents, right? And all on top of that stuff, another thing this list has got here is Ethereal. No, sorry, not Ethereal. Empyrean Spirit.
Stealth.
Yeah, it's stealth, but also does melee, right? Yeah, but it's so over 9 inches, so you've got to play that limited range restriction thing, which means that when you're doing your charges, when you're doing your scouts, when you're deciding what you're doing, you need to be thinking that in mind, right? You want to move your Banshees up, but not too close. You want your Side Ghosts to be close enough to help them from behind, but not too close so that they can charge around the Banshees. You want your Glaive Stalkers to be charging from certain angles onto your opponent so that your opponent's charges back have a -1 to hit. You want to be using your consolidation moves, your 1-inch bounces, everything to get this off, which makes this list more complicated than the average Age of Fantasy list, which is just charge forwards.
Where's this thing? You're taking your tape measure a lot when you're playing this, and this is the sort of army that, using all your tricks, you can just wipe people away. You can trade very effectively. I think trading is another thing that's very difficult to understand in OPR, as to when to overextend one unit to try and wipe out an opponent's unit, regardless of points cost. which can be a very good heuristic, but isn't always the best way of doing it. This is something that can trade well, but can also screw up your trades entirely.
Yep.
So remember that with your GU. Tape measure is a funny meme to talk about when we move on to talking about the Wood Elves. This army is advanced just because of Wild Veil. This minus 4-inch range when being shot at and 2-inch when people are charging you. Harvey mentioned earlier about fast units having charge priority. What do we mean by charge priority? We mean that I can charge you, but you can't charge me. Or I'm going first. How do we achieve that? We achieve that in one of a few ways. Obviously, going first is whatever. You achieve it by having more movement speed than your opponent and sitting in a danger zone where you can hit them, they can't hit you. You have the ability to ignore terrain, difficult terrain, and the like through flying and strider. Or this. You can so often just flat win a game on deployment because you have out-deployed your opponent. They are going to spend the whole game in your threat range and you spend your whole game out of theirs. Wild Veil could be hilariously strong, but because it's only on Ghost the Undead and Shadow Stalkers, very squishy armies, it's
Wood
not
Elves.
suppressive. What did I say? Ghost the Undead. It's only on Wood Elves and Shadow Stalkers.
Yeah.
It's on very squishy armies, so it's not oppressive in the state of the game. But what can you do to really leverage it? You bring something like this out of the Wood Elves. This is very nearly what I ran a 3-1 result at an event recently. It could have been 4-1, I think, if that event was all base game, but it was shenanigans and progressive. So you will eat shit on progressive with Wood Elves. I think that's a very important thing to say. Yeah. But base game, you can do some disgusting things. How do you get those disgusting things? We've got one of my favorite units in the game. I just fucking love the teleport rule. War Dancers, it's got a Grove Champion with Piercing Assault Aura in it. So when you charge with this 18-inch unit with Strider and Regen, you've got your 10 attacks that are all AP1 because of Piercing Assault. This won't wipe out absolutely anything, but you put it in the right place with that huge amount of movement and you can just take things off the board. And sometimes Harvey will charge you with a unit that should kill it, miss everything, or you regen everything and you win a combat while fatigued. That was hilarious. Yeah, so the War Dancers are pretty good.
Another thing to know there as well. They have unpredictable fire as well.
Oh, sorry, of course they have unpredictable fire. So
they've got a bit more punch. But yeah, the thing that makes this an advanced unit is knowing that matchups, like we said, right? This is a unit you do not want to throw into something and feel bad about it. You want to be picking your targets. You want to be using it as like, what was it we always say? We always say like the threat of doing something is greater than it being done a lot of the time. Yeah. This is one of those units, right? If you move it into some terrain where your opponent can't threaten it, and then you just start measuring to your opponent's units, they don't know how much damage it's going to do. Neither do you, right? Well, they don't let you measure into their units. There was a point this weekend where when I was playing with Dark Elves, I moved up one of my heroes, and then I just measured 30 inches from the hero to one of my opponent's units, and he went, "Whoa, okay, what the fuck was that? Why are you measuring that?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? I'm just measuring, right?" And I genuinely was. I was trying to figure out if he could threaten me and not the other way around. But he was immediately like to my list, like what do I need to do? What's wrong here? What could you possibly be measuring that for? So yeah, do that against your opponents.
Lesson number 6, head games. But at least with the War Dancers, if you measure 18 inches, that is your charge range. They can just blast people. I've got 2 units of Glade Scouts here, just 5 of them, but they're 24 inches with 2 attacks, each hitting on 4s. You know, it's not a lot of damage, but they are very good at being annoying. They have scouts, so you can get them up the board into the better position with Wild Veil. You've got the delayed deployment benefit of scout there, so you don't necessarily need the territory, but you can just wait and see what's happened here, and they've got stealth for a little bit more resilience against shooting. Then we've got what is actually like your biggest damage. It's not a lot, but it is your biggest damage. It's 10 Forest Watch, so qual 3, 2 attacks each, so 20 shots. And then they've got this Grove Champion with unpredictable shoot aura, so either they are hitting on 2s or they've got AP1. And then this hero as well has got 3 shots of their own. Again, this is a point where You've got ambush on the unit. You don't have to use it. Sometimes just putting the unit down and getting an extra turn of shooting out of them can be really good. And we'll come on to how they can do it very effectively in a moment. I've got a unit of Tree-Man Brutes. When I ran this, points were a little bit cheaper, and this was my Eternals. But unfortunately, we've been priced out of them. But these Tree-Man Brutes have got a lot of staying power. Again, Wild Veil, very good defensive ability, and then Grounded Protection Aura, so you've got a 5-up into a 5-up, can be very nice. Obviously, you're Army-Wide Strider, so you want to be playing with terrain. 4 attacks with Furious and Rending when you're charging could be quite nice out of each of these. Tree-Man Brutes are very good for 175 points. Now, this is where the real shenanigans come in. It's these Owl Riders. So, quality 3 attacks each, 9 shots. If you're me, that average 6 hits per activation of these is actually average of 3 hits per activation across the course of an entire day. I'm not salty. It only happened a few months ago, Dave. But they've got quick shot mark, which is very, very good when combined with your Forest Watch, because it means that suddenly this unit that might have been quite cumbersome, 11 models moving 6 inches and shooting some AP nothing bows, can razz it. They can move up 12 inches into terrain, play a Trixie Wood Elf game, and constantly unload their shots. Also, the Owl Riders themselves can just razz at 16 inches and still be able to shoot. It's very nice to be able to do. So they feed in very well. You are rarely feeding them into the Glade Scouts, but you can be doing that. And you come across with an army that can just be annoying, really very offensive to play against. And I don't mean offensive in that they have good offense. I mean that they're just, you're pissed off because they're very tricksy. You spend a lot of your game with your measuring tape. And if you're me, you put your scouts down way far up, you don't measure, you don't remember the fact that your opponent can attack you from 2 fronts, and you lose them, and you find yourself with 5 activations. It's only a 6 activation list.
Yeah, so a couple of things about this as well that make it advance. Yeah, so as you mentioned, the activation count. You mentioned about the ambush thing, so whether to put your Forest Watch in ambush or not. I think most of the time you're probably not doing it. Another note about the Glade Scouts is they have Scout, but you don't have to use the Scout. Like sometimes you want the activation, you want the advantage you get from being able to delay deployment on your Forest Watch, because they already have long range weapons, so you don't always need Scouts. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. So make sure you're choosing intentionally about that. The Owl Riders, they're a hybrid unit. Don't underestimate a hybrid unit charging in. They're actually more aggressive not shooting, thanks to Impact 2, right? They're actually more reliable at charging than they are at shooting. Yeah. So you kind of need to pick your fights with those, because sometimes it's better to charge in and go for a morale check. And that's also where the kind of War Dancers play. Both the Owl Riders and the War Dancers represent the kind of like follow-up threats, right? So you've got your like plinking away, shooting, weakening units, and then you dive in with these units that then blow up the remainder of the unit or get it below half and then route it off the board. But they're kind of waiting in the wings and waiting for those moments, right? So whilst a big scary stack of Forest Watchers with 23 attacks, let's say you get to hit on 2-ups, you're doing like a million, I don't know what it is, fucking 17 or something like that. You hit it a lot of times, right, with that. While that might not sound a lot if you're a GDF player, right, because you go like, yeah, they've got 3-up defense, whatever. In AOF, you can just like completely obliterate units with that number of hits. If they're called like Def 5-up, right, all of a sudden you're just like, you're wiping out most 10 stacks of units. But if you just weaken a unit, then that's when your melee things can start swinging in and start punching up and trading in a really effective ways. And because we're talking base game here, it's really important that you eke out every single bit of value you can from your shooting. You like every single one of your shooting units needs to be shooting every single turn to really get that value, to get those follow-up charges, to wipe things out. So by the end of the game, you're in a position to contest objectives. Because you can get pushed off points quite easily if you're doing a shooting and moving backwards. But that's where Wild Veil's nice as well, because it means you don't have to be as far away to not be charged, which means you're closer to objectives, practically. So yeah, this can be very, very tricky to play in the base game.
The thing I think is like one of the most important things to say as to why this is a hard list is because if I click this button and I show you literally the Dwarves list that we had up earlier, the Wood Elves into the Dwarves, you're out-activated, you're outmanned, there's so many more bodies on the board. They are really resilient because of Sturdy. Sturdy means that they're getting that 2-up defense on so many of their units when you're playing at the range you want to play at. So you have to have your target prioritization down to a T. And to get that down to a T, your movement game needs to be nearly perfect. They can just put 3 objectives fairly central in a game and move on to them and say, get me.
Yeah.
And you can just lose.
Yeah, and like so, but interesting enough about that matchup, right? Is outside of the spell casting, which is a bit more hard to play around. You can win that matchup, right? Because you can completely destroy the mobility game. You can outrange them. You can do target priority. You can have your Glade Scouts. Basically, they could be untouchable, right? In this game, if you activate them well. Owl Riders are amazing at decapping points, so you end up with quite a decap point strategy going in by the end of it. So yeah, like. It's a tricksy and hard game for sure. Dwarves are very vulnerable, very durable, and these guys obviously shooting is very expensive for an aggressive profile. But if you're picking the right side of their army to kill, you can end up with like a 1-0 victory kind of thing on objectives. Yeah.
I look at that matchup and I go, I know I can win that game. I also know I can really easily lose it. And I think like that is something that is so important to speak to the core skills of OPR. So bring everyone back to the way I started this video. OPR, low floor, easy to get into, high ceiling, really hard to constantly play all day long at the top of your game, move in, activation out every single turn you take, because all it takes is a little bit of a flub and your game falls apart. The dice go against you. It's a dice game. It's a random game. In that regard, it can just completely screw yourself up. And I could very easily see 2 people sitting down with this dwarf, for example, dwarf versus wood elves list. And I look at that and go, oh, wood elves will win that. But if you're on game 4, you're exhausted. You just make one mistake. One mistake can pull this apart. And that's really what makes it, along with the other ones, a very advanced list to play.
Yeah, I think this is a list where you spend the whole day measuring, and it's and you're often playing it with like, okay, I'm 0.1 inch away or whatever from your guy. You're like playing those really tricksy ranges, and it's very easy to just forget musician. And then you like do all your measuring, really smugly set it up. You double check with your opponent. You go like, that's 12 inches, right? So I'm out of charge range or whatever. And then they go like, oh, by the way, I had musician the whole time, easy peasy, charge that.
Exactly.
And that's over. Yeah. When we played our game with this stuff as well, like it was honestly like the mental maths. You think it would be easy just to go like -4 inch range or whatever, but there were moments where I was like, wait, so I move 4 inches and then shoot.
With
then,
another...
So that means that. So then. I'm -4, and so where do I need to be? And then like I've got relentless, so I'm like, how do I get relentless? Like I don't know, one of those kind of confusing things.
On both sides, right? The mental maths, because remembering the game isn't linear, and it's why I blundered my scouts in our game specifically so early on, because I measured from what I perceived as a threat unit, and you went, all right, cool, move up this other one. I was like, I just didn't fucking measure that. I didn't measure in 3 dimensions, and it could just go wrong. It can just go wrong. But at the same time, fucking love me some tricksy elves. Like, it's great fun to play with. And I always just think at the start of, like, when I see an event announced, I'm like, can I bring my elves? No? Can I bring my custodians? Like, they're very different play styles.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
I love the wood elves. They're brilliant, but you can fuck up really easily with them. Fab. Cool. I think that's about everything we wanted to say on this topic. This is kind of like, it's also a bit of a foray into a new topic that I don't think we've really discussed too much before. But a lot of I've said the words core tenets, core principles, all those points that we talk about a lot on the channel really feed into this topic. But most importantly, let us know what you think. Really keen to hear your thoughts on what would constitute beginner, intermediate, advanced, and some lists that you think you could do with improvement on. I know we spend hours talking about lists, just trying to constantly improve on them, but there's always that aspect of going, if I bring someone else's list to an event, am I going to be able to do as well with it as they are? People are in different spots, not only in skill level, but also play styles, and those things all feed in.
For sure.
That's it. I think that's it. That's it.
Yeah. The only thing to mention is we had a poll in the Discord for which video to do this week. So it was between this beginner, intermediate, advanced list video and the Age of Fantasy tier list, and also Dragon Empires. But Dragon Empires got absolutely destroyed in the poll. So next week's video is going to be the AOF tier list. So for AOF fans, get excited. Keep an eye out for that video, which should hopefully be coming out on Saturday. Today's video is delayed a little bit because having social lives and tournaments and stuff like that. Yeah. But yeah, either way, I look forward to that. And hopefully, yeah, if you've got any questions about the things you've seen in the video here today, jump in the Discord and we're always happy to chat.
Discord, comments, smoke signals, and carrier pigeons are all good fun ways of getting in touch with us. For now, though, I've been Dave. He's Harvey. This is Don't Think, Just Charge, and we'll see you next time.